Welcome, everyone. This is a meeting for Meet the Candidates, Friday, October 18th, 2019, 10 o'clock, here in the boardroom. I'd like to welcome and acknowledge the press. Is anyone here from the press? Okay, and also TV, Village TV. I'm sure we're on the air now, so I acknowledge that. Welcome to board members and honored guests, and I am the moderator, Sheila Bialka. Now, I'll introduce the candidates in order that they have been pre-selected. Number 1 is Ray Gros. Number 2 is Gary Morrison, who I'm afraid is not with us today, but someone will read his opening and closing statement. Joan Milliman, number 3. Egon Garthoffner. Number 5, Yvonne Horton. Number 6, Bunny Carpenter. Number 7, Joe Fitzekam. And number 8, Lenny Ross. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their opening statement. Then we'll go on to the prepared questions. The questions have been prepared, and each candidate will have 2-minute opportunity to answer the question. Audience questions. Audience, if you want to ask a question, will you please take a card from that basket, write your question, and return it to the basket. Thank you. Questions from the audience must be written legibly, please. 1 question per card. Then the candidates will be allowed 2 minutes closing statements, and I am Sheila Bialka, the moderator. So, without further ado, good luck to you all, and shall we get started? The first question, which will be to Ray Gros.
Question or the statement?
Oh, sorry, your statement. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. I'm jumping ahead. I'm anxious.
While serving as chair of various committees for Third Board and GRF, I have always tried to put forth logical ideas and solutions for a change that would be of value to all. I have always considered that would be the best decision for the majority of our community and not just for just a few. If elected, I will continue to consider the most efficient ways to keep the village a desirable place to live. I have worked closely with Chief Moy as chair in the traffic court in security as an advisor. He and I have made several videos for TV as to traffic rules and the correct use of golf carts. I have also worked closely with Dan Yost, our insurance coordinator, on several fire investigations, and have also been involved with attorney Kelly Richardson appearing in court on a Third Board mutual matter. I still work closely with the Laguna Canyon Foundation, providing copies of activities to the front desk. In the past, I have worked on the gate clearance system for several years and have provided information for improving this gate system, i.e. cameras for license, ID, etc., which is now in use. I have provided information on the epoxy program for copper pipe leaks, drain pipe cleaning, and the best fire alarm system for notorious buildings. Past club activities: Earthwork Vice President, Greening of the Woods, Rod and Gun Club, Bowling Club, Keyboard Concert, and Director of Laguna Canyon Foundation in Historical Honorary Number, November of 2009. I believe it is very important to have town hall meetings to explain, for instance, justice security responsibilities and traffic rules and regulations, as many of our residents are very confused as to the traffic rules and regulations and security's actual operations and duties. This, for instance, is the traffic rules and regulations, and many people, unfortunately, don't read this information, so they don't understand what's going on. And at the traffic hearing, we explained to them by video on the wall what they have done and why they've done it, and believe it or not, we're actually getting thank you notices from them. I will have more information at the closing statement, because I believe my time is about up, regarding additional background information as a mechanical background information, which is very important in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Diane for Gary.
Hi, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Diane Phelps, the outgoing GRF treasurer. Gary Morrison is on a federal grand jury and regrets being unable to be here today, but it's my pleasure to be able to read his opening and closing statements. As most of you know, I was on the United Board for the last 3 years, 2 of them as treasurer and chair of the United Finance Committee. I also served on the United Maintenance and Construction and Governing Documents Committees. My experience on the United Board included analyzing and making decisions on United's reserve and operating expenditures, budgets, and contracts, such as the VMS Management Agreement. Many of the issues I dealt with while on the United Board are similar to those addressed by the GRF Board, but I also have direct experience with many GRF issues. For example, as a member of the GRF Maintenance and Construction Committee, I am familiar with the projects on the GRF project log and have addressed and voted on recommendations for many of them. I'm very familiar with the GRF finances and have weighed in and voted on the issues that have come up before the GRF Finance Committee. I fully understand GRF's monthly financial reports as well as its 2020 operating budget and capital plan. I'm on the investment task force that interviewed and recommended investment advisor, and on a panel that interviewed and recommended hiring the VMS controller. As a member of the GRF Alternative Resources and Cost-Sharing Task Force, I am aware of the wide variety of revenue-generating ideas that have been suggested, and I have been involved researching some of them. In addition, I attended bi-monthly treasurers' meetings at which the treasurers of United, Third, 50, and GRF discussed common areas of concern and shared experiences as a way for us to help each other solve common problems. As to my education and prior work experience, I have both a bachelor and master's of business administration degree in accounting and economics. My work experience includes 18 years as a tax auditor and appraiser for the County of Orange. I also served 20 years on my condo association board. I think my experience on the United Board and GRF committees, as well as my education and prior work experience, prepared me well for a position on the GRF board. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Joan, please.
Well, as a current GRF board member, I found that most every skill I have has been used and challenged in some ways that I never dreamed. As secretary of the board and as chair of the Media and Communications Committee, my knowledge of English grammar and spelling is very helpful. In fact, it annoyed many people, and that's why they chose me to be secretary. I also serve on the CAC committee and have my research and analysis skills are challenged all the time as I read reports and do outside research of one kind or another and coordinate with the Recreation Department. I've even been asked to be a teacher for the board with Robert's Rules, gulp, and I had to make lesson plans, so being a teacher was helpful. The Breeze was started under my watch, and I'm the editor-in-chief of that. And finally, as a student of psychology, I've listened actively to what my fellow board members and neighbors have said about the issues that concern them, giving feedback as honestly as I knew how, and made every effort to find positive solutions for all. This work is not really work to me. It's a pleasure and an honor. The multitasking and problem solving stimulate my thinking in most creative ways, and I am grateful for the opportunity to have served this community as a GRF board member for 3 years, well, actually 4 years. So I hope you'll give me a chance to serve another 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Egon?
I've been a village resident for 4 years. I've been active in various clubs since I got here. I was president of the German-American Club for 2 years. I am on the board of the California Club as VP of membership. I'm currently also the president of the Toastmasters group, club which meets once a week. In addition, I'm also a member of the Chicago, New York, New Jersey, bocce clubs, and the weekly discussion group. My background educationally is that I have a Bachelor's of Science in Geology from UCLA and a Master's in Engineering, in Petroleum Engineering from USC, both fields that require a great deal of analysis and in-depth study. My goal as a GRF director would be to support the activities and projects that are beneficial to the village, and those things that the seniors come to the village for in the first place. I believe my analytical background and project experience and knowledge of project and incremental economics would be valuable in understanding and evaluating GRF projects. I hope to be able to get on the board and serve the community in a bigger way than I have so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Egon. Yvonne, please.
Well,
Yeah. There.
thank you. I'm running for the GRF board because I have the unique experience and training to make informed decisions. I have 30 years senior management experience working for a major manufacturing company. Also, I have 5 years as a principal in a limited liability company, plus 8 years experience on a nonprofit mutual benefit corporation board. My experience includes management and training of supervisors and employees in all federal and state requirements, plus sensitivity training. I've been responsible for job forecasting and budgets. I have worked with the California Department of Real Estate and attorneys to obtain CC&Rs for condominium projects, as well as banks for funding, construction budgets, and contractors. In 1984, a portion of the Summer Olympics were held in Costa de Casa's recreation areas, which eventually became the Silver Bronze Corporation. While I was working for the board on the Silver Bronze Corporation, my responsibilities included categorizing and prioritizing all of the repairs on the property. The buildings and the properties had been leased for 10 years with no maintenance. We were on a very tight budget. And, but within 7 years and proper budgeting, all of the properties were close to the 1984 Olympic standards, which my team and I accomplished. Also, I had the privilege of working with the Olympic Committee. I have a double E from Northrop University, and I like golf, and I take pottery, and I'm a member of the Saddle Club. I can't think of anything else, but thank you for listening.
Thank you, Yvonne. Can we have Bunny next, please?
I'm Benny Carpenter. I have 35 years in buying, managing, negotiating contracts for large corporations, evaluating cost and price for research and development projects, capital equipment, furniture, facilities, long-term agreements, you name it. In my career, I think that I bought and wrote contracts for every expense item that it would be needed to run a corporation. For the last 5 years, I have served on the third board and was instrumental in developing standard terms and conditions for contracts and developing a purchasing policy that is used by GRF United and Third. During my term, Laguna Woods Village transitioned to a new management company. I chaired the task force on purchasing, which led to enhancing purchasing best practices, documentation, and project log formats. I also served on the landscape, communication, M&C, compliance, and executive committees. Currently, I'm working with staff on updating the purchasing manual, and soon we will be updating the purchasing policy. I also serve on 4 GRF committees: M&C, CAC, the Emeritus Program, and the Revenue Generating Ideas Task Force. I think my experience adds to the value of the GRF board. I love this village, and I understand the needs. And as a board member, I will support the restoration of this community while controlling costs by spending wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Bunny. And Joe, you're next.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I am Joe Fitzekam, and my wife, Andre, of 37 years, moved here with me 6 years ago. I've been active in many sports and many of the organizations. I am president of one of them. My wife and I belong to many clubs and support and enjoy the events at the Village, at all the clubhouses, and the Performing Arts Center. I envision a GRF where, first, we listen to the residents and thoughtfully research the decisions we make in harmony with our mutuals. Second, with every decision, we will ask ourselves the question, who will this help and will this hurt anyone? Third, all decisions must achieve the best value for your money. Fourth, truthfulness is needed to make accurate decisions. We must study the most honest, unbiased research. The GRF board must always be a no-nonsense, no-politics zone. Fifth, my goals are security, reliable transportation, support for all clubs and organizations, well-maintained facilities, a friendly, efficient staff, control dues by better productivity, and give our residents peace of mind. My 40 years of success as a manager, district manager, and operations manager will help all this come to fruition. I recognize what saves money, and I recognize what wastes money. I will be a productive, proactive member of the board. I will use my innovation, imagination, and cooperation to partner with VMS and the other board members. I have studied and familiarized myself with the governing documents and procedures. I have attended and participated in GRF meetings for years. I am here because there are serious times ahead and we need serious management. We have major challenges like projects like the Performing Arts Center, Clubhouse One, and many other things we must meet responsibly financially. I will not look back. That is not where our future is. We will open a new door to a new path, to a better future where the residents are even better served. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Lenny?
Thank you very much. My name is Lenny Ross. I'm a resident of Laguna Woods for 6 years. And I graduated from the University of Southern California, Business Administration. The areas of emphasis were marketing and finance. And I graduated from Arizona State University with a master's in business administration, and areas were marketing and finance. My occupation for 40 years was automotive development of original equipment accessories for many of the car companies that you and I know. One of the positions I had was with a company called Enkei International. We made and supplied wheels. One of my principal responsibilities while working for Enkei was to improve customer relationships. And as a result of improving this customer relationships, we were successful at launching the biggest accessory wheel program ever in Toyota's history. We delivered over 500,000 just-in-time wheels over a 5-year period. Means you have to match up the wheels with the cars as they move through the assembly line. And we won 3 supplier awards while working for Enkei. And at Laguna Woods, I served on United's board for 2 years. I was president for 2017 and 2018. I was also treasurer for some of that period as well. I served in the finance committee, and one of my main goals and responsibilities was to maintain minimal annual increases for HOA dues. Purpose to get on the GRF board, based on my experience while on United's board and my corporate management experience and commitment that when we do spend money that was given to us in trust from our members, we confirm that each expenditure is based on a much-needed community improvement, and that we select the optimal company, the best company, that provides the best overall quote. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you all for your terrific opening statements. Now we will get to the questions. And Ray, you're up first, and the question is, will you be able to work with the HOA boards in a trusting and collaborative relationship toward a common vision and mission for the community?
Absolutely. As I stated earlier, I go for the community as a whole. I don't go for just a few people to see what they want to do. We try to do things that would benefit all to make this a fabulous place to live.
Joan, same question. Do you want me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Okay. Will you be able to work with the HOA boards in a trusting and collaborative relationship toward a common vision and mission for the community?
Yes, I very much believe that we need to continue to work together for the community. Each of us staying in our own lanes, as we say, the mutuals working with the homeowners, and the GRF working with the facilities and maintenance of all of our grounds. So I think it's important that we coordinate everything because it's for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Egon, will you be able to work with the HOA boards in a trusting and collaborative relationship towards a common vision and mission for the community?
Yes, I'm certain I would be able to do that. I believe in openness and transparency in what we do, and so therefore I would be able to listen to them, understand what their needs are. I would be able to feed back to them what we can do, and above all, I would be able to assure them that I'm not out to have, with my own agenda. I'm looking only at their needs when we are working together. Thank you.
Thank you. Yvonne, will you be able to work with the HOA boards in a trusting and collaborative relationship towards a common vision and mission for the community?
Absolutely. I think that we should all work together. And I think the common goal is to make our community a happy and thriving place. And all the boards should be looking at the needs of the community.
Thank you. Bunny, will you be able to work with the HOA boards in a trusting and collaborative relationship toward a common vision and a mission for the community?
This is one of my goals. If I am chosen to be director on GRF, I definitely feel the necessity, excuse my frog.
That's okay.
I definitely see the necessity of all boards collaborating and working together. With my 5 years of working in this community as a director, I see that many things, are treated separately for each organization. And I want to have a pathway so that we can collaborate and join together and have a vision for the community, just like you said.
Thank you, Bonnie. Joe, will you be able to work with the HOA boards in a trusting and collaborative relationship toward a common vision and mission for the community?
Yes, absolutely. One thing we have in common, we're all neighbors, and we share the same things. We all belong to a mutual. We all receive the benefits from the facilities that GRF has. GRF has a very unique responsibility. The home mutuals have the challenge of keeping the homes functional, keeping plumbing lines working, keeping houses valuable, keeping them painted, and all these types of things. With GRF, we have a unique thing. We have 250 clubs plus. We have multiple sports, multiple facilities, and those are all there for the enjoyment of the neighbors we all have. And so we both fill a function, and we have to work together to make sure we never conflict, and we keep everybody on board so the mutuals support GRF, and GRF supports the mutuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Lenny, will you be able to work with the HOA boards in a trusting and collaborative relationship toward a common vision and mission for the community?
Yes, definitely. Based on my corporate experience, where you have to lead companies and you have to lead management, you get a lot of experience because communication is so vital. Communication throughout the entire teamwork is necessary to get the job done and meet your corporate objectives. Similarly, in our community, We have to work very closely with our fellow board members and to make sure that we supply all the needed services for our community as best we can. And that's vital to the success of our community.
Thank you, Lenny. Next question, we'll start with Joan. If you were elected to the GRF board, what would be your priorities and what do you think are the most important issues that need to be addressed?
Well, one of my main priorities is to continue to enhance communication. And communication is a two-way street. That is from the residents to the boards and from the boards to the residents. I think we've developed some very good communications now to the residents. We need to have more from the residents. So town hall meetings and perhaps other smaller meetings are a way to do that. What was the rest of the question?
What do you think are the most important issues that need to be addressed?
I think keeping a balance in your job. As a GRF member, my responsibility is for the grounds and the buildings, and not to interfere with the things that are being done with the mutuals, but to support them. And I think sometimes we get mixed up as to which areas we are responsible for. In addition, keeping in your lane as a board member, we are here to set policies and procedures and work with staff, but not to manage staff. And I think that's very important. Those are some of the things I'm thinking about. That's it.
Thank you, Joan. Egon, if you're elected to the GRF board, what will be your priorities and what do you think are the most important issues that need to be addressed?
Well, my initial priority would be to learn all about what's going on the board and what the board is facing with on a day-to-day basis. And with respect to that, I do not come with my own agenda. I would be looking to see what needs to be done, and then make my decisions based on that. As far as the priorities for the village, I think one of the most important things is to really be able to communicate to the people what it is we are doing and why it is we are doing it, and gain their trust and assure them that we are not out just to spend their money. We are actually here to look out for their assets, and that would be my main goal.
Thank you. Yvonne, if you are elected to the GRF board, what would be your priorities and what do you think are the most important issues that need to be addressed?
Well, I think budgets and revenues are the things that we need to look at. We need to, I don't know how to word it quite right, but if we're careful with our money, the things that we need to get done, over a period of time we can get them done. If we are careful with the assets that we have, we can generate the income that we need without, how can I say it? Without raising the dues for the residents. That's
Thank you. Bunny, if you're elected to the GRF board, what would be your priorities and what do you think are the most important issues that need to be addressed?
Currently, I think one of the biggest issues with the board and the community is the budgets and the revenues. We're facing big costs for the PAC and the clubhouse, and we need to be able to prioritize and evaluate and be very conservative with the way we're spending the money. I know that everybody wants to know where the money's going, so my goal would be to have more transparency and understanding of the full budgets and what these big projects entail. Thank you.
Thank you, Bunny. Joe, if you were elected to the GRF board, what would be your priorities and what do you think are the most important issues that need to be addressed?
I think there's three things that come to mind. First, as always, budgets can be an issue. We need to look at what we need to spend to maintain what this community's meant to have been. And at the same time, control dues and do these things in a timely manner so we have a situation we're not overspending one year and the next year not spending enough, perhaps. But the reality of it is also, this place was designed to have fun. That's part of the GRF. We have the amenities. We have the sports facilities. This is meant to enable people to enjoy their lives. It's the whole theory behind Laguna Woods Village. So that's a very important thing to do, and we need to take every type of action to enable that. We also, thirdly, have issues going on of how to raise revenue or how to come up with different ideas. And I think I think it's a very good thing, but we have to be very cautious. We don't want to take and do anything that affects somebody too financially. We don't want to do anything that would create hardships for somebody or take something away from somebody. And I'm pretty sure we don't want parking meters. So I hope in the future we take real responsible actions in terms of what we do and make sure we keep that in the concept of this place is meant to be fun for us and our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Lenny, if you are elected to the GRF board, what would be your priorities and what do you think are the most important issues to be addressed?
I think number one is to control spending. And I'll give you two examples. One example is the transfer fee, which increased from $2,500 to $5,000 this year. And that has had a big impact on the real estate community, especially amongst the co-ops, which $5,000 doesn't sound like a lot for many of you, but for people that are buying houses for $200,000, $5,000 is quite a bit. And we have to look at the impact of the community when we increase the transfer fee and to see the ramifications of that. So I want to look at that very closely to make sure that if we do increase it again, that it minimizes the impact to our community. Also, when we do upgrade the clubhouses, these are the most significant expenses that we're going to be taking on. We need to do a better job, I think, to evaluate all the different alternatives, whether to rebuild a unit or to upgrade it, and compare and contrast and get the best value for our dollar. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny. Ray, if you're elected to the GRF board, what would be your priorities and what do you think are the most important issues that need to be addressed?
I believe firmly that safety, security, congeniality for the residents is one of the most important things. We have to make sure that when we have to make a decision, that we must make sure that it will generate good procedures that will also enhance the community. We also have to try to hold down the cost if at all possible, but do not overdo the issues because it will put us in a real bad spot. So we must really think this thing over and really listen to what the people have to say in making our decisions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Third question, we start with Egon. If you were appointed chair of a committee, how would you encourage involvement from your committee members?
Well, I would begin by collecting their thoughts and their ideas so that we have a full gamut of things to look at. And for any given project, I would also ask every person's input to see how they feel and what the ramifications are, what the pros and cons are of the given project, and then put all of that together. As a chair, I think my position would not be to rule the thing, but to guide and primarily to listen to what the people want to get done, and then make my assessment of whatever my action will be on that basis. But I think in that situation, I very much believe in examining all the ideas very, very much in depth, and then letting the majority rule. Thank you.
Yvonne, if you were appointed chair of a committee, how would you encourage involvement from your committee members?
Well, first I would look for their strengths. And then I would ask for volunteers to take over the research on the committees. And then it would be by consensus how we would make the decision, whatever the decision may be on the committee. That's all.
Thank you. Bunny, if you were appointed chair of a committee, how would you encourage involvement from your committee members?
I am a team player, and I like to lead from behind. I like hands-on. So I like everybody to participate, and I like to have everybody have a part in the decisions that we're making. So there are several committees on GRF that are very, very important, that have an effect on all the committees, on all the community, and the biggest one, I think, is recreation. And I think it's very important to review all the policies, to review all the activities, and determine what is best for the community.
Thank you. Joe, if you were appointed chair of a committee, how would you encourage involvement from your committee members?
Well, I think one thing is to be a good listener. One of the things my father told me very, very early on as a child, that you're not going to learn anything while you're talking. So I think it's very, very important to put the issue out in front of the guests there, the committee members, ask them to give their response. But as you know what things are going to come to fruition, you take and work with them, that they talk to their neighbors. So we get a viewpoint of what the community wants. I think it's very important. I may have a good idea, someone else may have a good idea, but it's only a good idea if the community is in favor of it. So I think it's very important they engage the entire community, get a feel for the issue, understand the issue, and then ask questions. Some people may come forward and be very outspoken in a meeting. Others, we may have to ask questions of to bring out their thoughts. I mean, sometimes silence is golden, but sometimes we want to know what that gold is, so we'll ask them the questions. But certainly you work as a team together. I think that's the most important thing. Thank you.
Lenny, if you were appointed chair of a committee, how would you encourage involvement from your committee members?
I think the most important thing is to explain what the purpose and the objectives and the goals is of the committee to the team members on the committee. And then based on everyone understanding what the role of the committee is, then listen to each of your advisors very closely and get their full input at all times on how they could contribute to meeting the goals and objectives of this particular committee.
Thank you. Ray, if you were appointed chair of a committee, how would you encourage involvement from your committee members?
That's a good question. I happen to be the chair for Mobility and Transportation, and our committee members all participated with the consultant peers and fairs, and they have asked questions, have posed situations, because the people are very upset as to the conditions right now as to the bus system. And with all of the questions that were posed by the committee members and the consultants meeting with the community on various times and places, we have obtained a lot of great information. And on the 29th of this month, we're going to make a great presentation that will help the community understand what's going on. And I think they'll be very pleased. And most of this was because of our committee members. The questions they asked to make sure that we were doing what the folks wanted done. And like I say, on the 29th of this month, we're going to have a special meeting here, probably 1:30 in the afternoon. I believe it's the 29th. And we will have some great answers, and I believe the people will be tickled to death because of what the committee has done.
Thank you. Joan, if you were appointed chair of a committee, how would you encourage involvement from your committee members?
I chair the Media and Communications Committee right now, and one of the first things I would do, especially for new members of the committee, would be to share the committee's charter so that everyone knows what the committee's about, make sure we're all on the same page. And then I would also want to know, well, who are you? And have the committee members share their talents and why they're on this particular committee, how they can help us. In other words, get everyone to share. And as chair, when we're working on issues, I would remain as neutral and let everyone put out their ideas so that we can debate subjects as they come up and make proper recommendations that have been fully thought through by the committee members. Thank you.
Okay, the next question, we're going to start with Yvonne. Do you understand the difference between being a director of a housing mutual versus GRF? And how would you like to see the relationships between GRF and the housing mutuals? And how would you achieve this vision?
Yes.
It's a long question.
Yes. Well, GRF, yeah. GRF manages our recreation. And the mutuals, they make policy for the community, for the housing. Gee, what was the rest of the question?
How would you like to see the relationships between GRF and the housing mutuals, and how would you achieve this vision?
Well, I'd like to see open and honest communication between the mutuals and the GRF board. And how would I achieve that? I would open myself up to that. I would try to get the different boards together. I think they have presidents' meetings or something like that. Get them together and talk. And I think that we're more alike than we are different. And so we have to integrate all of our ideas. And that's what I think that I would do. Yeah.
Thank you. Bunny, do you understand the difference between being a director of a housing mutual board versus GRF? How would you like to see the relationships between GRF and the housing mutuals, and how would you achieve this vision?
This is another one of my goals. Let us work together. There are a lot of ways that we can work together. The housing does have a different responsibility, because they are responsible for the housing and the maintenance and the care. And GRF is all of the assets that are listed under the trust, the clubhouses, recreation. So they have a different responsibility, and United has a different responsibility because they are a co-op. But the way we can get together and talk about all of these things that concern us is through the corporate members meetings, all boards meetings, which would help the transparency of everything that we're all doing. And we can also collaborate on ideas that would work, that would impact the community.
Thank you. Joe, do you understand the difference between being a director of the Housing Mutual Board and GRF? How would you like to see the relationships between GRF and the housing mutuals, and how would you achieve this vision?
Well, I think the communication is the biggest thing there. I'm very outgoing, so I don't have much trouble talking to people, and I know a lot of the people just from the various sports and activities I take place in. But it's always important, I think, as GRF tries to gain support for something that it wants to do, that they directly go to those mutual members and see how they feel about it, how their community feels about it. Certainly, the Housing Board Mutual is an entirely different set than what the Golden Rain Foundation is, where Golden Rain Foundation is handling amenities and security and sports. But we still have the same thing. We still have budgets, and we're still serving the same people. I don't necessarily know that the residents look at a big difference as the Golden Rain Foundation or United or Third Mutual or Mutual 50. They're looking for the services they get and the fun they can have here, and those things need to coincide. For the most part, the housing mutuals have a great deal of autonomy, but we still have the same issues because we still have the same residents. And I have an email, and I have a phone, and I have a cell phone, and that's always on. So it's not that hard to get together with people. But certainly I try to prompt some meetings and encourage people to attend meetings and see what's going on at GRF or at the mutuals. I've made a point to attend GRF meetings and some committee meetings. I've attended third mutual meetings. Yesterday I was at a meeting at Mutual 50 because at GRF board, even though we may be doing different things, I need to understand the needs, wants, and desires of every resident on every community. Thank you.
Thank you. Lenny, do you understand the difference between being a director of a housing mutual board versus GRF? How would you like to see the relationships between GRF and the housing mutuals, and how would you achieve this vision?
Thank you. Yes, I do understand the difference and the distinction between a director for GRF, who's in charge of the amenities, and the director for the housing mutual who's in charge of the housing. And I think that one of the things that can be done is one of the things that happened when I was president of United. We had regular, of course, monthly meetings. And at those meetings, we had representatives from GRF or VMS come and make presentations to our committee and to our board. And I think that would be very helpful to accelerate the communication between the boards by having representatives visit each of the other board meetings on a monthly basis just to communicate what's going on in the community. Thank you.
Ray, do you understand the difference between being a director of a housing mutual board versus GRF? And how would you like to see the relationships between GRF and the housing mutuals, and how would you achieve this vision?
That's a good question that Lenny brought up. The whole situation is that at each meeting, information is presented nationwide, so to speak, to the whole community. If there's any kind of confusion on the part of what the housing mutual would like to have, then they should ask that meeting, that portion of the meeting be presented at the next time to give them a chance to go back to their housing mutual to make sure that everything is done correctly. Then it can be represented and done properly. And like Lenny says, at every meeting, we have representative people there, and we want to make sure that everything is completely clear on both sides of the fence. Thank you.
Joan, do you understand the difference between being a director of a housing mutual board versus GRF? And how would you like to see the relationships between GRF and the housing mutuals, and how would you achieve this vision?
Yes, I understand. GRF is responsible for recreation facilities and amenities of the whole community, while each housing mutual works on the problems that concerns our houses. And sometimes it's difficult to accept that GRF facilities need improvement, and we're going to have to spend money on that. Whereas we have emergency issues perhaps at a housing mutual with waste lines and 50-year-old houses that need repair and so on. But our whole community needs to be considered. And so I would like to have more town hall meetings where we could all get together, not just the board members, but the board members can share their concerns at perhaps all board meetings more than once a year. And not just for training for boards, but for information about the needs and considerations for all boards, and perhaps breaking those larger meetings into smaller informational groups. It hasn't quite been done like that before, but a way of breaking down the barriers. I mean, every committee on GRF is made up of mutual members, 3 GRF members and 2 from from United and Third, and 1 from the tower. So we have the information available. We just want to be sure that it gets back to the mutuals and their concerns get to us.
Thank you, Joan. Egon, Do you understand the difference between being a director of a housing mutual versus GRF? And how would you like to see the relationships between GRF and the housing mutuals, and how would you achieve this vision?
Yes, I do understand the difference. I realize that the GRF has responsibility for the facilities as a whole and the roads and such things, and that the mutuals have responsibility for the buildings and the maintenance of those things that are directly in their area of influence. I think the most important thing is to get very good communication between the groups where our needs or our desires intersect, and to make sure that we do not trample or try to take advantage of the other groups. Essentially, what I would look for is smooth relationships between the two groups, and that's most easily or readily brought about by listening to and finding out what their problems are and how they relate to us, and then finding a common solution to those differences. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Bunny, what do you think your biggest contribution to GRF would be?
My contribution? I have a lot of experience in contracts and purchasing and buying and analyzing, evaluating price and cost analysis. This has been very effective since I've been on third, because I have always been very involved in the purchasing and contracts procedures, and I still am. And I just think that being able to evaluate pricing, get the details, ask the right questions, that we can accomplish choosing how we spend our money. We can choose, we need to be able to evaluate it. We need to be able to ask questions. And I think that's really important, because I think I have a good business background and a good business sense, that I'm always looking at how we can get the best bang for our buck.
Thank you. Joe, what do you think your biggest contribution to GRF would be?
I think coming out of the private sector, as a manager, a district manager, an operations manager, I operated a plant. We did distribution of products all over the United States, so I understand moving things around. I also understand manufacturing. I understand employment. I understand being successful. I understand purchasing. I was so effective as a manager. One time I went to visit my daughter in a state, and a $25 billion company called my owner and asked me what I was doing in that state, because they were that concerned I was there. But we weren't moving there. I was just visiting my daughter. But I have a good general business background. I think we missed that a little bit. We have a lot of people with great specific influence, and they have great backgrounds. But mine is kind of a general type of thing. I have a little bit of construction. I have a lot of management experience. The last job I was in, they grew 800% the last 10 years I was there. That wasn't because of me. My owner spent a lot of money, but I provided over 100 managers for that company. I am a very good communicator. I make people grow. I try to make myself successful as hard as I can. I try to make the people around me successful. It's a whole lot more important that we all succeed together than try to succeed individually. And being in the private sector, when you're successful, you gave raises, you hired employees. If you took and you weren't successful, you died. And so with this attitude that I have in the private sector, I will do everything to make sure that the Golden Rain Foundation makes every one of their assets grow and give more to the community as long as I work on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lenny, what do you think your biggest contribution to GRF would be?
I think number one is my corporate experience and my experience while on United's board at working with budgets and making sure that the budgets are set realistically and we achieve the budgets and we work within the budgets. And I think those are very, very vital. Also, contract negotiations. I've had a lot of experience working with contracts and negotiating the best possible solution with both parties to make a win-win situation for both. And also, I'm on the conservative side as far as fiscal issues. So I want to be sure that we do get, as Bunny said, the best bang for the buck. And I think that's what we need to make sure, because the money that we get is, and we have fiduciary interest to make sure that we get the biggest value, and we make sure that we're making it last the longest possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny. Ray, what do you think your biggest contribution to GRF would be?
Well, at the present time, I'm on GRF, and I have a background in law enforcement, fire investigation, insurance investigation, and I have supervised many investigators and others that have worked under me on various locations. At the present time, as I am right now, with my background, I've been of value on some cases, like I say, because of my insurance background has helped, and the fact that I was a cause investigator, fire cause investigator, and my background as a police officer has been very, very helpful. But I also, believe it or not, have had a background as a mechanical person. I was a refrigeration air conditioning person, and I have information then that I could be of assistance. I understand when we need to repair things, I know what that is, so I could be of value to that as well. So my background is pretty solid, and I believe I could be of some value that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Joan, what do you think your biggest contribution to GRF would be?
Well, I'm a kind of generalist. I have a background in education and psychology, and so I think some of my critical thinking with research and analysis and long-range planning would be very helpful. I'm very interested in creative solutions within the budget and enhancing our revenues as we can. But most important, the communications. I have the ability to listen and carefully and to communicate those solutions to others.
Thank you, Joan. Egon, what do you think your biggest contribution to GRF would be?
I think my biggest contribution would be my ability to analyze projects or ideas that are given to me, and to look at all the possibilities. The village has been around essentially unchanged for many years now, and none of the projects, none of the things that we do are rocket science. They're stuff that all the communities in the United States do. So it's really important to understand, when you're going out to spend money, what are you getting for it? Is it wasted, or is it actually going to give you the benefits? The biggest thing facing all of the boards, I think, is sustainability of the lifestyle that we've developed. And my idea would be to simply make sure that we are really keeping a watch on our money, and that we get what we pay for, and that we continue the current lifestyle that we've developed. Thank you.
Thank you. Yvonne, what do you think your biggest contribution to GRF would be?
Budgets. I always look at the budgets, and I know how to prioritize jobs, and I know how to bring projects in at below cost. I've had lots of experience at that, and especially with old properties that we had to bring back to usable condition. So that would be my main goal, my main thing.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll start with Joe. Well, it's quite a complicated one. Why are you running for the board? And if you have no previous experience of Laguna Woods Village board experience, how do you consider yourself an asset? Please answer this question by addressing your areas of interest and expertise that you bring. Do you agree with the focus and direction this area is going in now? Why or why not?
You went over 2 minutes, not. Actually, my generalist background in terms of business gives me a pretty good wide-ranging idea of what goes on. I noticed from participating in GRF meetings as occasional speaker, there were issues that came up from time to time where I had the ability to save some money or redirect something that was to take place that could take place in a better way. And thankfully, GRF would eventually look at what was going on, and we come up with a decision that was more advantageous. I participate a lot in the amenities as far as GRF. I think the village games, for example, I probably have around 30 medals from doing that. I've played as many as 11 different sports here. I was playing as many as 7 at one time. My wife and I, we enjoy the Performing Arts Center. I used to be a musician very long time ago. But I do not worry too much about the idea. I used to, when you run a corporate board, you can probably take and adapt the GRF. But the very thing GRF was set to do is why I moved here. And that's one of the things there. This is not someone who wants to be a board member or who wants to be elected. I know these sports, I know these activities, I've done these sports, I've done these activities, and I can make it better for everyone there. And that's why I'm asking for people's support. I'm a competent management person, I've been successful wherever I've been, and I really, really want that opportunity to contribute. I've taken so much from the Golden Rain Foundation the last 6 years, and the benefits I've received, the things I've done. I want the village to know what's here. So many times, I was in a parking lot one day, and somebody asked me where a facility was. It was 50 yards away. They didn't know. We need to advertise what we have. We need to promote what we have. We need to get people involved. And that's really what I hope to contribute in that area.
Thank you, Joe. Lenny, same question.
2 minutes.
It take too long to repeat the question.
Okay, here we go.
But I think I understand it.
Oh, do you? You don't want me to read it again?
No, I think I understand it. That's
Okay.
fine. Why am I running for the board? I think the number one reason that I'm running for the board is to exercise control of large expenses and try to be a little more prudent as far as how those expenses are spent, and make sure that we get our money's worth for every dime, that our hard-earned money that we get from our members, we receive it, and as our fiduciary interest, we have to be sure that we're spending it wisely. And I have an interest, and my interest in making sure that we do the best we can with communicating to our members that we are trying to minimize expenses as best as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Ray, do you want me to read the question again?
I believe I can understand it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I have to be repetitive, and I've already made to mention the fact that I was in law enforcement, I was in fire investigation, insurance investigator, and I also taught at college and university level for quite a few years. I have an ability, and I'm not patting myself, but I have an ability when something goes awry, I try to be able to explain honestly what has gone on. For instance, at the traffic hearings, we have a lot of folks, and by the way, this is the size of the traffic information. That's pretty thick. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't read it, don't understand. And we have a video that shows them, okay, I never stop at a stop sign, or yes, I always stop. Well, we show the video, it shows them going through 20, 25 miles an hour. Also, additional thing, for instance, if persons park on the sidewalk, I let them know, what you have to understand, if your mother, your daughter, whatever, your person like this happens to be in a wheelchair, they can't get by the sidewalk. Consequently, they have to go out the street. So I feel like I can provide good information that helps people to understand. And that's why I keep insisting that we must have these different meetings to be able to portray all of this information to people so that they understand it. And like I say, unfortunately, people don't read this. And we may say it 2 or 3 times on television, but it goes over here, or they may not be interested. So I believe I do have an ability to assist in explaining what is the proper way to do things. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Joan?
I just like to be in the middle of things. Well, that was perhaps the first impetus to get involved in the boards. But I didn't want to be a board member for a long time, and I was asked several times to do it, and I thought, And finally, when one of the board members I respected a great deal asked me, I said, okay. So it was a kind of learning curve for me, but my background is in education primarily and music, and I have had experience in a CPA firm for several years as a supervisor and as a consultant. I ran my own consulting business in arts management, so I had a little business background. I said, okay, at least I could read a budget. Anyway, my concern primarily, and the reason I'm running, is to make sure that everybody knows everything I know. You know, I'm trying to be open and to, if I'm going to be in the middle of it, I would like the residents to be in the middle of it as much as possible, so that sharing and transparency is very important to me, and that's one of the reasons I'm running.
Thank you. Egon, do you want me to read the question again? By the time it gets to you, you've probably forgotten half what the question
Why
was.
not? That sounds like a good idea.
Why are you running for the board if you have no previous Laguna Woods Village board experience? How do you consider yourself an asset? Please answer these questions by addressing your areas of interest and expertise that you bring. Do you agree with the focus and direction this area is going in now? Why or why not?
Okay. Well, as I said in my intro, I've been a member of the discussion club in Laguna Woods since I got here. They meet Sunday morning. And at that, it's an open forum, discuss anything. But invariably, one of the questions that comes up each day will be something to do with village life, whether it be transportation or care of the landscaping, whatever. People always bring that up. And I've been very vocal at that discussion group, and a lot of people have encouraged me to run for one of the boards. And but I've always said back to them that I didn't have enough experience yet. I didn't know enough about what was going on in the village. Well, it was suggested to me again, and this time I thought, well, I have more experience and I do understand what's going on. And so I come to it primarily because I think I can help make things better or smooth out problems that exist. And the background that I have in looking at projects, analytical background of looking at things that last for years and years and years, like a project where you drill lots of wells and then you have to take care of those things and make sure everything works not just for tomorrow, but for 20 years. And I think that I can be valuable on the board for that reason. I think that it's important that we do things that sustain what we now have and that will make our lives better rather than cause problems and cause uneasiness among the residents. So I think that I would be valuable primarily because I can keep us going the way we're going now.
Thank you. Yvonne, do you want the question again?
Now I'll turn my mic
In
up.
pieces?
The reason that I'm running for the board is because I want to get involved. I do have previous board experience on a nonprofit mutual benefit corporation, so that gives me a little bit of a leg up, I think. Also, I want to see us keep all of our amenities that we have. I think that we need to improve on the things that we do have, like some of the clubs, they need a little lift up, you know what I mean? I have the ability to look ahead and see what problems there would be within the community. when it comes to recreation. So that's why I'm running.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bunny?
Well, I really want to be involved in the projects, the revenue-generating ideas, and the policy-making that impacts our residents. I like to find solutions that enhance our community. And I'm interested in preserving our assets that provide enjoyment to our members.
Thank you.
I'm not a big talker.
Okay, final question, and we start with Lenny. Have you had management experience in your working career? If so, please describe your duties and responsibilities in that capacity in terms of how many people you managed, what financial responsibilities did you have, and what were your day-to-day responsibilities?
I think I explained that as an example when I gave my opening address, but one of my responsibilities was when I was working for a wheel company called NK, and we were developing an inline accessory wheel program for Toyota Motors, for the Camry. And I had to work with a team of about 20 people on my team. And we explained what we needed to get the job done. To develop this program, we needed to buy quite a bit of equipment to facilitate the program. We needed to, of course, produce the product on time, every time. And so it was inherent on everyone on the team to make sure they bought in to meeting all of the objectives of this program, because the program itself went on for 5 years, went from 2001 to 2005. And then we were tasked to supply every wheel to the assembly line of Toyota on time, every time. And we couldn't be, even if you're an hour late, you get fines of $50,000 to $100,000. So it's very serious that you meet the goals while you're working for it. And we were successful in meeting the goals. In fact, as a result, we received 3 Supplier Excellence Awards while we were supplying to Toyota. And so we're very pleased that took place. And that was because everyone on the team did what they needed to do, and we accomplished our goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Ray?
As stated earlier, I began my supervision in the United States Navy in 1950, where I supervised 6 sailors that were involved with the air conditioning refrigeration system for the whole ship. I was in charge of that system. We also had a complement of 15 Navy personnel that would back up the Marines when we had landing, so to speak, in Korea, and they would blow bridges and so forth, and it was my responsibility to go behind them with this complement of 15 men. I've worked with Rick Schmidt Investigations, where I had 4 people that I supervised. I had to make sure that when they did the investigation, that their reports were complete so that the insurance company was satisfied as to exactly what happened. And I would double check to make sure that they had done the right thing as to the cause and origin of the fire, for instance. I also owned Gros Enterprises, and I had 5 people working for me there, and I did the same thing for that situation as well. I had insurance classes that I taught for quite a few years, and I would present information to all of the staff members as to how you go about these particular incidences, what you need to do, and so forth and so on. So I would supervise as many as 10 to 12 people at a class outing that would go over, for instance, a fire investigation or some other type of investigation. And that has been my background. So I've had a lot of time in involving with people and supervising them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Joan?
Well, as a teacher, I had 200 students a day, and you can imagine what that was as far as supervising is concerned. But I was also president of the faculty and worked with LAUSD union. And so often I would be called to defend cases as they came up. I've been on various boards in the area, LA Dance Alliance, and I helped to found Music at Angel Fire. And at Angel Fire, I was responsible for putting together the volunteer groups, among other things, and helping with fundraising. At Laventhal and Horwath, the CPA firm, I was at first editor for staff reports from Management Advisory Services, and I supervised the administrative staff. I also had my own consulting business as in music performance management. And as I say, we founded Music at Angel Fire, so that's been my experience.
Thank you, Joan. Egon.
Well, my background in work entailed something that's somewhat different. I was a reservoir engineer for most of my career. And what a reservoir engineer is not somebody that takes care of something that has a dam someplace and has a lot of water behind it, but in fact is looking at the underground and figuring out how to develop the resources that are there. So my work background would be primarily to integrate a lot of different groups in working in that thing. The way a project develops is first you have to have some geological background on what it is that you're looking at. From there, what you go is into how you're going to develop it, how many wells are you going to need. In order to do that, you have to go through and work with other people. Initially, you start out with legal, make sure that the land department, make sure that everything is good with the leases that we have. And then you have to work with the drilling department to plan the wells. Then you have to go through and work with facilities to make sure they all get hooked up. And all of those steps, you're looking at what is the most economical way to do that so that you will meet the budget that you set out in the first place. And basically, so my background was in integrating people and having them work together or feedback to me all of the things that are necessary so that I could get the project get put in and get it effectively working. And so that would be my background. That would be my usefulness to the board here. Thank you.
Thank you, Egon. Yvonne.
Well, I work for Boeing, and I was one of the senior managers. I managed 5 supervisors and their teams. I also had to deal with the union and negotiate settlements with them. We built the biggest aircraft that is flying today, the C-17. I was on the first project for the C-17, the design project. I also was a principal in C&H Properties, and we built condominium complexes, and I had to work with the contractors and make sure that everything got done on time. And then I worked on the Silver Bronze Corporation and revitalized the properties that in Cota de Casa, the recreation project, projects that they had and properties that they had. I can't think of anything else. I mean,
Okay, thank you. Bunny.
Will you repeat the question for me?
Yes, absolutely. Have you had management experience in your working career? If so, please describe your duties and responsibilities in that capacity in terms of how many people you managed, what financial responsibilities did you have, and what were your day-to-day responsibilities?
Well, my 35 years in purchasing, purchasing was really quite different in my era. We had to understand how to read a contract, how to put a team together that were involved in that particular project, and oversee the project. So we worked closely with other departments that were involved as far as getting a project done. So as a purchasing agent, I had to oversee all of that, and I was involved, something just came to mind, it was so funny. But actually, I was involved in getting the first faxes for communication between the field and the corporation for an oil company, for Santa Fe Oil Company. As the technology kept growing, it just seems really funny now to think about that I was instrumental in putting faxes out into the field. But anyway, I've had to organize, I've had to know policies and procedures, I'd had to know how to get something done within an organization. I had to know how to bring people together and just was very involved in everything that was going on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Joe?
Yes, I've been involved in management about all my life. Started maybe not that many employees and probably worked my way up from there. The most facilities I managed at one time when I was responsible for in 3 states was 35. I probably never had more than a few hundred employees, and earlier in my career I had far less than that. But the reality of it is, the management experience is what you bring to it. And when I brought management experience to the people I had in the last job I had, worked there for 10 years, I learned how to make people successful and be a successful manager. I sort of laugh. I still have a bottle of scotch at home that the owner of the last company I worked for gave me that has the quotation on it, "Never say no." Because as a manager, my managers are taught, you never say no. We handle between 3 and 4 million transactions in person with people. And out of the 3 and 4 million transactions, every person was schooled how to handle a customer issue. Every manager was schooled that that employee would come to them if they couldn't handle that issue, and the manager would. And if the manager couldn't handle it, they contacted me, and I directly contacted the customer and took care of it. So out of 4 million transactions, I would probably handle 20 of them a year. And that's what management is about. You're getting things done through people. And that's why I had 100 people promoted in a matter of 10 years in one company, because no one ever made a mistake with a customer, because they knew the customer always had an issue. It didn't matter if they were right or wrong. It mattered that you solved it for them. And a clerk would know that. A warehouse person would know that. A manager knew that, and I always knew that. And we have a unique situation here, because in some ways, the neighbors that we work for are our owners. At the same time, they're our customers.
30 seconds.
And so that's where my thought process comes from. But, hundreds of people, I think that in my last career, I was probably between 10 and 20 facilities at any one time with the company I worked for. So I'm used to multitasking pretty well. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, now we get to the questions from the audience. So starting with you, Ray, what is your experience working with purchasing and other contracts?
Well, the contract information is because I had my own business and I supervised for a couple of other companies as well. I don't get involved, so to speak, as a financial person, but I pay attention to what's going on. And if I have questions to make sure that I understand what is actually in process, I make sure to do that. Then when I do understand, I then give my approval or disapproval, depending on the circumstances. I like to make sure that everything is done properly for us, so that we're not overcharging people or overcharging on situations for construction work and so forth and so on. And I'll continue to do so if I'm reelected. Thank you.
Joan, what's your experience working with purchasing and other contracts?
Well, basically, my experience comes from Laventhal and Horwath, where I was working with contracts all the time for management services. And I would review the contracts and help to write some of them. So I'm quite familiar with what's needed in a contract. And so the contracts we see here are not foreign to me. As far as purchasing is concerned, I've had very little experience in that, except with Bunny and our committee. And that's been my experience.
Thank you. Egon, what's your experience working with purchasing and other contracts?
Well, I didn't have any actual experience in direct purchasing. I would look at what's available for a given a task, and then talk to various vendors, find out what their stuff costs, how useful they think it is, and And then I would make recommendations on to other people in that group that I described, the work group, that they would look at which one of the items they would then purchase for their use. With respect to contracts, mostly what I got involved in is things with the land department so that we were meeting the obligations of the various leases and we didn't do anything we weren't allowed to do. And also a little bit of work with the Division of Oil and Gas of the state of California to make sure that we had their permits lined out and were in good order. That's it.
Thank you. Yvonne, what's your experience working with purchasing and other contracts?
Well, I owned a company, and we built condominium complexes. I wrote a lot of contracts.
Is your
Microphone.
mic on?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, start again.
I said that I own my own company. We built condominium complexes. I wrote a lot of contracts. And because I borrowed money from banks to build them, I had to work with the budgets too and make sure that everything came under budget or right on budget, or I would go in the hole, right? So that's my experience with contracts and budgets.
Thank you. Bunny?
Well, that's my career. Being a purchasing agent for 35 years, being able to read contracts, I've found through the years is a unique skill, okay? And one of it is being able to understand what is being said and being able to ask the questions, the details, and understand what's being written. And where I found, while working on the boards, is that this skill flows over into policy making, the policies that are being written right now. What do they mean? What is the impact on the community? And I think
Ask
it's,
one question.
I don't know if I'm interrupting something here or not. So anyway, everyone that knows me knows that I have a lot of experience in this particular area. And I want to take that skill for the GRF board.
Thank you.
All
Joe?
Yes, over the years, I've got involved in purchasing several things, either as a manager or as an operations manager. I've negotiated contracts with the Libby Owens Ford, owned by Pilkington. I've negotiated contracts with PPG, Pittsburgh Paint Glass. We've also negotiated contracts and purchasing situations with Seagram's, Gallo, Ford Motor Company, and so on down the line. I was a pretty good purchasing agent. One of the jobs I had before the last one and where I ended my career at, basically, they had been buying architectural glass and metal for a number of years. And I was in a special marketing program they had to create a new type of product for architects. And I tried to tell them, get me involved in purchasing, and they didn't do that for 2 years. And after a couple of years, I talked them into it. And 6 or 7 phone calls here in the country and out of the country afterwards, I lowered their total cost of everything they bought to sell by 30%. So it gives you some idea. I had international contacts that way. Even if things happen at GRF, there's times I've dealt as a private citizen here with contractors, getting information to make sure we're getting the best deal, we have the most options we can have. Very, very effective purchasing agent. To the point that one of the companies I bought from one time, another subsidiary of theirs, I put out of business in another state, and they actually took me to Myrtle Beach for a week to go play golf with their director and with their national sales manager, and I came back with an extra $100,000 in discounts from that trip, so it's a fairly profitable golf trip. But negotiating contracts or negotiating pricing, that's one of the things I did as a sideline.
30
but I
seconds.
was effective. Okay, thank you.
Lenny?
Yeah, during my career, I was responsible for negotiating many, many contracts. And this was contracts between supplier company, which I represented, and the automotive companies such as Honda, Toyota, Mazda, Mitsubishi, Hyundai, all of them. And we worked very closely to make sure those contracts were developed properly and sometimes we of course we had to work with the attorneys of our various companies and make sure that the contracts were legally spelled out and properly done. And also, we worked with, I did work with purchasing to make sure that we bought the right equipment to develop the right accessories and supply the right accessories on time. Thank you.
Thank you. Joan, do you see any waste the board makes, and how do you think you can eliminate them?
Say that again. Any waste,
Do you
plural?
see any waste that the board makes, and how do you think you can eliminate them?
I'm not sure I could eliminate them, but I do see some problems sometimes with things running back and forth and the timing of getting our projects done. I'm not sure how to solve the problem, but we are looking at it, that much I can tell you. That might be the one thing that I would be concerned about, how to speed things up, but still do them efficiently.
Thank you. Egon? Do you
Just-
see any waste?
Okay, so I don't know if I'm stepping on a specific toe or something like that. But I could say, as I say, I've been around only for 4 years, but I have seen one thing that struck me at the time. And upstairs in this building, on the third floor, there used to be the gym. And at some point along the way, somebody came up with a plan to move the gym, okay? So they decided to move the gym from the third floor to the back area of this building on the first floor. And that required, first of all, construction in that area, okay? And at the time, I attended one of the meetings where they were talking about what the plans were for that third-story area. Well, so they went ahead, they outfitted the stuff down here, and then they moved some of the equipment from upstairs. They left a large part of the equipment, especially the weight training and resistance equipment. They left most of that upstairs and bought new stuff down here, that very nicely matching stuff, but wasn't quite as useful for older people to be using as resistance machines. However, the third floor is still empty. Whatever was proposed to be put in there never happened. And meanwhile, we got a gym down here that is not quite as good as, I would say, because I was a day-to-day user of the one upstairs. It was not as good
30
as
seconds.
what they ended up with. It was very, very pleasant on the third floor to work out and have that panorama view of the whole village. And now you're looking at the parking lot. You spend a lot of money with somewhat less useful equipment. For my own purposes, I now go to Clubhouse 1 because I find, even though that stuff's older, it was better. So I have to question, why was that money spent and why is there nothing going on the third floor today? Thank you.
Thank you. Yvonne? Do you see any waste on the board that the board makes, and how do you think you can eliminate the waste?
Well, I'm not as familiar with some of the projects that the GRF board is working on, excluding, I think, Clubhouse 1 and the PAC. And I think that before I really made any mention of what waste, I would like to see the plans for those particular projects before I gave you my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Bunny?
I don't think there's any waste intentionally. But one of the things while on the board that we're asked to look at is what are the wants and what are the needs? So there's a lot of people that get on the boards that have a lot of wants. And so you have to ask yourself, are those wants necessary and do we have the money for them? So I would have to say no waste. Waste is not intentional. It's just a matter of determining the wants and the needs and setting priorities.
Thank you.
Yes, I think we generally have pretty good people, but there's always waste, and sometimes waste may be as simple as we miss opportunities. A few times in projects, and one particular comes to mind with me where I had advocated in one case, seen a situation where there's a need for the community from GRF, but the people who use that facility know what that need from it. But someone then takes and gives it to someone to design something. And sometimes from the point of design, the person who do a brilliant design may not understand totally what the design is for. So you may have one plan after another plan after another plan, and we're working, our poor department there pretty hard, going through all kinds of plans. We need to identify what we need to do. We need to figure out who it's going to benefit, what their needs are, and communicate that all the way through the chain of command. So when someone designs a building or a facility or whatever the case might be, they know exactly the parameters of what's needed, and that can save a lot of money. In one case, I think there's one project we did, we certainly saved enormous amounts of money because eventually the information bled through the system and came up with a much more viable opportunity after I brought it to their attention. But I wouldn't criticize me for waste. I don't think waste is an intentional thing. I think it more happens as a point of maybe missed opportunities or a lack of good information. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Lenny?
Yeah, I think there's always waste, but it's inadvertent. And I think how we can reduce waste is by getting involved with when there's expenditures, especially large expenditures being contemplated, that it's the board's interest to closely monitor what those expenses are going to be and how to mitigate those expenses. And when I was on United's board, we set up a committee just as a task force committee when we were evaluating lighting in the community, and which was desperately needed. But we were able to, through the task force, we worked with staff to develop a program that ended up saving hundreds of thousands of dollars over what was going to be spent and still got the job done. So I think it's just a matter of communicating with staff when we do entertain these projects to make sure that we're getting the most for our money. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. And if your question that you sent up does not get asked, I would suggest that at the end of the meeting, you talk personally to whoever on the board, on the potential board is of your interest. I think that's the best way to eliminate. We've got a lot more questions and we don't have time for them. So the last question is going to be, as a GRF board member, would you recuse yourself from voting on an issue that appears to be a conflict of interest? Egon.
Yes, absolutely. I think as an example of our national politics, we see that you should not get involved in voting or making an input into activities that would benefit you personally. Although I do not see within the board, within this area where we are now, that I have anything in my background that would tend to make me have a conflict of interest. I have no friends or in the construction industry or anything like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yvonne.
Of course. I would recuse myself.
Mike.
Oh, darn. I'm not used to.
Yes. If you're on the board, you'll get used to it.
I don't know. I don't
I'm
know.
always really.
Of course I would recuse myself. However, I don't think that I see any conflicts that I would have to do that.
Thank you. Bunny?
I have the same answer. I would definitely recuse myself.
Thank you. Joe?
Yeah, I wouldn't in particular see too many conflicts with me, so I'm kind of in favor of everybody. But the reality of it is, I think if you have an individual thing, it does appear to be a conflict, even if it's just for appearances, you're best to recuse yourself. Some issues may come up, though, where you may have, and I've seen this before, as many as 7 board members have a conflict with the same issue. So then you have a little voting problem, so you might have to reconsider it then. But if your vote is not something that is needed for any particular reason, then you're the only one involved with it, I think you should always recuse yourself.
Lenny?
I would agree 100%. I would recuse myself if it was needed. Thank you.
Ray?
Yeah, I'd certainly recuse myself, but I would want to know exactly what caused this situation to beginning. We need to know the real answer to that, and if it's that big of an issue, we need to look into it further so that maybe we can do something different to make a change.
Joan?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Okay, we will end now with your 2-minute statement, your final statement, please, starting with Ray.
Some of this will be repetitive. However, because we were limited to how many words we could put down on a candidate report in the beginning, I had to leave out several things. And one of the important things, like I just mentioned earlier, I have a mechanical background, which is really important because people need to know that. And because that way I understand what's going on when we have to do repairs and so forth. And again, I'll be repetitive here, but as chair of the Mobility and Transportation, our staff and committee members have done a fabulous job in working with what the people have wanted. We've had many, many, many complaints as to what's going on, why is it this way and that way. So the committee members have met physically with our FAIRs, our consultant and so forth, and they have also gone into the various mutuals and had big, big sessions, town hall meetings to find out exactly what's necessary. And with what is coming up on the end of this month, is going to really please a lot of people. We're making a lot of changes for the benefit of what people have asked for, and we're putting them back into what is necessary for them. And I honestly believe that they're going to be very, very pleased on this situation. I also needed to understand that you do so many things here as mutual, as GRF director, that people have to understand that you have reasons, for instance, that may not have been disclosed before. And that, again, is why it's absolutely necessary that we go ahead and have the mutuals understand what's going on. And as directors, we must also consider to always do the best thing for the community as a whole and continue to make Laguna Woods a fabulous place to live.
Thank you, Ray. And now we have Diane speaking for Gary.
Sorry about that. But it is easier to be out there instead of answering all these questions. So, okay, so here's Gary's closing statement. I wish I had been there to answer the questions posed to the other candidates. Unfortunately, I had a date with the federal grand jury that I couldn't refuse. But most of you know me and are aware of the knowledge and experience I have in village governance. I hope that my absence today won't stop you from considering me for the GRF board. I encourage you to contact me if you have questions that you want me to answer. I'm committed to enhancing life in Laguna Woods Village. Almost all of our residents are on a fixed income, so I understand that money is always an issue. But I am also aware that, like our manors, GRF facilities are up to 55 years old. I want to do what is necessary to maintain and update GRF facilities, but I am conservative and will be watching to make sure we aren't wasting money. I personally love Laguna Woods Village. It's one of the best things that has happened in my life. I want to continue to enhance and protect it. I'm asking for your support and your vote in the upcoming election. I have no other agenda than to listen to mutual board members, residents, and staff, and to serve the GRF board to the best of my ability. I am excited at the possibility of serving on the GRF board, and I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Joan?
I didn't give you all my background because it's in the report, but I have a BA in English from Occidental College and a PhD in musicology from USC. You may ask, what on earth is that, and why does that have anything to do with what we're doing? Well, the research that's necessary to get a PhD in musicology is pretty frightening. And so I figured that I'm pretty able to analyze things and come up with some creative solutions, and that's my strength. Neighbors continue to need to know how to solve their problems and get more feedback on the progress of work that's done for them. And I'd like to think we have more recently developed some very reliable resources of information, but there's always room for improvement through simplification, promptness, and accessibility. And I hope to continue to promote strong communication, collaboration, and congeniality among my neighbors, fellow board members, and our great management staff. I envision Laguna Woods Village continuing to work for cutting-edge communications, service, and long-range planning for a bright and happy future. And if elected, I will continue to work on solutions for clarity of purpose and practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Egon?
Well, as I said, my goal as GRF director would be to support the activities and projects beneficial to the satisfying, affordable lifestyle that we've come used to in the village and that draws seniors to the village in the first place. I believe my analytical background, project experience, and knowledge of primary in incremental economics will be valuable in understanding and evaluating GRF projects that need to be looked at. It's important to all of us that live in the village that we enjoy stable surroundings. We want to live our day-to-day lives without surprises. I do not come to the board with a personal agenda or a pocket full of pet projects. My primary goal would be to help sustain what we have, spend an absolute minimum amount of money, listen to the input from the people on a day-to-day basis, and talk to them, get a good understanding back and forth, and always look out at the money to make sure it isn't wasted. Thank you.
Thank you, Egon. Yvonne?
Well, as you can tell, I'm a person of few words. And I believe that we should look at the needs of the community. We should work closely with all the mutuals. We should also be open to any and all new ideas while always following the governing documents. Thank you.
Thank you. Bunny?
I really love this community, and I think everybody knows that because I've already been on the board for 5 years. And this means another 3 years getting on this board. But I like to be involved. I like to find solutions. And I definitely want to be involved in the decision-making for the enhancement projects for the community. Thank you.
Joe?
Yes, I humbly ask the community to support me. I would be honored to be able to serve and work together with you to make the community the best we can make it. I ask for the support of the directors who will vote to decide which one of us will be on the board. I am serious and dedicated at all my tasks from the time I was my college class president to the secretary of my local school board to the corporate board meetings I chaired. I advocated to save the village games. I started and led the rallying of the clubs to convince GRF to save the yearly village games so that hundreds of people didn't lose the chance to play and thousands of memories wouldn't be lost. And that succeeded. And I thank GRF and the other people on that committee from the other boards who let the games go on. I played an important role in bringing the new pickleball and paddle tennis courts together. My support of using the old site and the layout I handed the GRF board of directors saved an enormous amount of money. I had to prove that many reasons that they were told the old site could not be used were wrong. Thank you to the directors here who motivated GRF to come to a more cost-effective solution that is working brilliantly. Rather, it is the beauty of our village, the arts, the crafts, the sports, the games like bridge and mahjong, the dances, the entertainment, the great works of the army of dedicated volunteers we have in our organizations. I will be your advocate, just as I was for the village games. I will work that no one takes your joy away. My love of Laguna Woods Village and my respect and hopes for every happiness of each resident will guide my actions. I wish to protect the happiness of our neighbors, the value of our homes, the greatness of our facilities, and control cost. GRF is here to enable your dreams, enable the joy of the dreams we can relive again, enable the joy of the dreams we live here for the very first time, enable the joy of the dreams we know are yet to come, and we will be joyful in our quieter days as we sit and smile with the memories of the joys and the dreams that came true in Laguna Woods Village. Thank you.
Thank you. Lenny?
Thank you all for your consideration of my candidacy for GRF board. I hope you all please consider my achievements, which I have achieved while I was on United's board with minimal annual increases to our monthly assessments. I think we have to be very careful before we double the size of a transfer fee to $5,000, as it is a lot of money for most of our residents, buying properties at around $200,000. And it may be partially related to slowing sales activities for co-ops. Likewise, we need to be especially vigilant while we are investigating the cost to upgrade one of our clubhouses to make sure whether we upgrade or we replace, that we have done an exhaustive study gathering experts and communicating to our members each step of the way. In summary, if I am selected to GRF, I'd like to serve on the Finance Committee and Energy Committees to make sure our members are getting the best quality amenities at the best price. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny. I just want to thank all of the candidates. I think you've done a superb job answering these questions. I'm very impressed with every one of you, and I want to thank the audience for their questions, and I'm just sorry we couldn't get to all of them. So as I suggested before, if you had a question that didn't get asked, I would suggest you speak to one of the candidates or all of the candidates after the meeting. And I thank everyone who was involved in this, and this is the conclusion. Thank you.
Yeah.